Hey everybody, this is Brian Shoup, Mr. 302. This is the first episode of Mr. 302 podcast, and I am here with my good friend, Pastor Kenneth Wagner of United Church. Good morning, sir. How's it going?
Great. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Excited.
I am too, and I wanted to tell our audience I was trying to think of what was going to be our first episode. How was I going to kick this off? There's so many people that you can interview in the state of Delaware. And as I said that, something rang in my head. You always preach about this, and that is put God as the foundation of everything you do. And before we introduce you and get to that, tell me a little bit behind that, putting God as the foundation.
No, that's something like, to your point, I talk about all the time, like just Christ being the center, right? Being the foundation. Because if anything else is going to be shifting sand, it's going to be shaky. And so, when you do a podcast with your marriage, family, whatever it would be, is like when Christ is first and He's the center, He's the foundation, man, everything else kind of flows from that place. So
absolutely, and I don't know if we'll get to my testimony today, but I can tell you, Pastor, I've been a Christian all my life, but I have not always put God first, and I had a real awakening in my faith about 4 years ago. And when I did that, when I put God first, I got to say, He took care of everything Himself.
Right. It's like it goes from black and white to color, right?
It does.
It's like two-dimensional to three-dimensional.
That's a great way of putting that. So today we're going to, first of all, tell us a little bit about United and the excitement behind this church in Delaware.
Gosh. Man, we planted this church, started this church, whatever phrase you want to use, 8 years ago in September. And so we just celebrated 8 years. And when we launched the church, when we started the church, it was in Dover only. So we started in the Short Center for the Arts, downtown Dover. Beautiful, beautiful place. And we worshiped there for 1 year. And then we moved to Dover High School, which is where one of our locations still is. And then about 4 years ago, and then we relaunched it after COVID, all that. We relaunched our Milford campus where we're sitting right now. Yeah. And so we're one church in two locations. And so, man, it's just been over 8 years just seeing lives changed and people come to Jesus and marriages restored and people that didn't have hope, finding hope. All of those stories that you would hope to hear from a church, all of those things have been happening for a little over 8 years in this church. So it's been amazing, been a miracle. Literally, I sit back and think about it. I'm like, God, I can't imagine, I can't believe that you would ask me to be a part of this. Always humbled just to be a part of what He's doing in the state of Delaware. It's amazing.
Well, you guys have done an amazing work throughout Delaware. Tell me a little bit about what you try to do each Sunday, because you get very individualized with people.
I think it all goes back to when we started the church, one of the things that we said was that we want to answer questions that people are actually asking. And I grew up in a church where, it was factually correct. It was biblically sound. And it was one of those things that felt more transactional, and it felt more informative than it did like, hey, how do I apply this today? Like, how do I get better? How do I apply this on Sunday afternoon and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? And so when we started the church, I wanted to answer questions that people were actually asking about. Their kids are crazy. How do I raise kids? We know about that. How do I have a godly marriage or marriage that works? Even before like people get to a godly marriage, like a flowing and functional. How do I become a better leader? How do I've got this anxiety and I've got depression. I'm struggling. How do I navigate through these things? So we were like, man, we want to answer all of those questions. And I think that when you answer questions that people are actually asking, it does feel individualized. Like you're like, man, I feel like, it's no telling how many people on a Sunday say, I feel like you were talking directly to me. And I said, man, that's awesome. And I think that goes back to what only God can do, but also partnering with God to answer questions that people are truly asking.
Yeah, that's great. I just had someone at a kid's birthday party come up to me, and he said that exact quote to me. He said, when I was at church at United last Sunday, I felt like the preacher was speaking right to me, directly to me, and it was amazing to hear that. And I have felt that before as well. And you all do not just go kind of for the softball, easy discussions. I mean, right now you're going through a session or a series called what happens when I die? And you could kind of
Doesn't
feel
get more to the point to that. Yeah.
you could kind of feel the energy get sucked out of the room real
Yep.
quick. You could look around and there was tears in people's eyes because it's a deep discussion. But
Right.
but why do you hit hard on those tough discussions?
I think there's plenty of noise. I think there's plenty of, you can go on social media and you can watch the news, and like you can find plenty of places that are just going to kind of meander around and just talk about things and talk around things. And when you go directly to things and you start bringing truth to those things, people listen up. And I think that people are, whether they would be able to admit it or not, like, I forget what the movie is from, like, you can't handle the truth, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think people can. I think people desire it and they want to know, like, when my time here is done, like when I die, what happens? Because eternity is a lot longer than the 70, 80, 90, 100 years that we may have on this planet. And so I think people are really asking these questions, and they're deep soul questions that people are asking.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the thing that I really want to get started on today, I really want to talk about is our culture here, not only in Delaware, but across the nation. You've talked a lot about, not only in church, but also around the state of Delaware, about how, not only as Christians, but also just as people and as families, don't always give in to what culture is telling you is the right thing to do, or that you have to be open to everything that's going on. And let's start that discussion. So tell me a little bit about when you talk with people about culture and how it might not be for them and how they combat that. And we'll start that discussion.
Yeah, I think in my conversations with people, I don't think the narrative that necessarily is being pushed on, whether it be on broadcast, on cable, television, or on social media, I don't know that is the feeling that everybody in America necessarily has. But what happens is this massive movement or massive voice gives volume to these things, and now it feels like even the people who maybe don't line up with all of the things that are being, the agenda that's being pushed, I think that people, they wonder, okay, are there more that feel like that way than feel this way, or that really feel like family is important, or that moral standards are important, or that living a faith-filled life is important. And I think that people wonder if they really are as small of a number as they really are, because I don't think they are. I think that's what the culture has made them feel, but I think there are more people that believe that the family is important, that believe that there are moral standards, that there are right and wrong, that we shouldn't be throwing bricks at buildings and taking things that don't belong to you without being charged for that. It's called stealing. It used to be when I was when I was a kid. Now it's like they just watch people walk out of stores. So I don't know if that's getting to kind of the heart of what you're talking about, but that's kind of where my thought processes go. Yeah.
So let's bring in United Kids. You have a service here. People are, they bring their children. They're watched, for lack of a better term, during service.
Yeah.
But they're, as you say, they're taught on Jesus' level. And how does that play into allowing those kids not to be afraid when they go out of church, to feel like there's somebody else there?
Yeah, when we use that phrase, we teach Jesus on their level, it's simply because we want it to be, you wouldn't sit, I have a 7-year-old, and I wouldn't sit him down and give him a filet mignon, right? I might give him chicken nuggets, right? Because it's smaller, it's more bite-sized, it's easier for him to consume. And the same is true when they come into United Kids, is we want them to have, and it's not like it's any less true or it's any less of the Bible, but we want it to be in bite-sized pieces where they can take that in and it becomes nurturing to who they are. And I think it's important because even when they go to school, they realize that, okay, now I've been in United Kids, and there are people around me that are my age that believe the same way that I do, that put Jesus first, that he is the center of their life, that their parents are putting Jesus first, and they're seeing these things. And so now they're walking through the halls of maybe it's their public school or even their private school or Christian school, and they're realizing that there's something, I'm not in this by myself. Like I'm in this with other people.
Sure,
so
sure.
It's important.
And we know that God has been taken away from the center of the education system in schools, and also from the government centers as well. Is there, what are your thoughts on potentially teaching people about that, or bringing it back to those centers, or having a focus on that, or what do you think the balance is there that needs to happen?
Right. We talk about, and this is what I tried to. I worked with middle school and high school students before we started our church, and what I try to encourage when students then and even adults now is, God may have been taken, or prayer may have been taken out of schools, but you can't take God out of schools. Like people that are walking into the school that are followers of Jesus, like God is inside of them. And so they are literally carriers of the gospel, carriers of the good news. So when they're going into the school, they can treat their classmates different. They can treat their teachers differently. And people begin to ask questions. You may not be able to stand up on the chair and preach the good news, right? but you can be different in such a way that people are like, hey, there's something different about that kid. And that's what our hope and desire is that there's kids and students, with United Kids, starts at 6 weeks old. I mean, what can you teach a 6-week-old? But you can teach them what love looks like, and maybe they don't have a lot of that, affirmation, or they don't have a lot of nurturing at home. We're able to provide that for them. 6 weeks all the way through 12th grade. Our desire is that they would continue to grow, and so that people would look at them and they say, there's something different about that person. And they're taking God where God has supposedly been taken out. And now, I mean, there has been detriment to, whether it be prayer being taken out of schools, or, teaching even, some school systems won't even teach creation as an option of the way that the world began. Like, it's not even a theory that's being taught. And I think maybe they're a little intimidated by that, because maybe it's too true. I don't know.
And I like the way that you, I've heard you say this several times, that you live your life in a way that people see you're doing something different. There's something different about that person. I think there are so many people that have a perception of Christians,
right,
of this individual who is damning people because they're not living the way that they do.
For sure.
That is condemning people because they don't live in a certain way, X, Y, and Z, that they think is the right way in life. And if you look back to the way that Jesus treated people, it was welcoming them in, no matter what their sins were, no matter how big their sins were, no matter how broken they were, and people looked at him and said, there's something different about him. I want to follow him. And we, as followers of Jesus, should be following his example, not the first example that I gave. And you guys do a great job at making sure people get that message through.
I think it is sad, because I think for too long the church has been known more for what they're against than what they're for. And I think that, for any of the audience that's listening, I think on behalf of the church, I'm sorry that we've been known more for what we're against than what we're for. We're for Jesus, we're for love, we're for peace, we're for all of these things. These are great things. And there may be things that we differ on and disagree on, and maybe whether it be whatever it would be. But the massive majority of things, I think we can get behind love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, self-control. Those are good things. Those are fruits of the Spirit. And I think that we can get behind those things.
Sure.
And one of the things I love most about Jesus is that Jesus, I think of I believe it's John 8, the woman's caught in adultery, right? They're brought in, they were like, hey, the law says that we got to stone her, Jesus. What do you say? And basically the whole point gets to, he says, hey, he was without sin, cast the first stone. And all the guys drop their stones and they walk away. And Jesus looks at the girl, and I love this because he doesn't condemn her. He says, hey, where are your accusers? And she says, they're gone. And he says, right. And he says, go and sin no more. And so he met her right where he was. He loved her right where she was, but he loved her too much to let her stay there. He was like, hey, there's a better way. There's a better life for you, and I know that you've gotten caught up in this. And that's what I love about Jesus so much, is that he catches you where you are, and he says, hey, there's a better way. There's so much more. And that's the way that we like to talk about it is, this woman was walking in sin. There's no other way to say it. She was caught in the act of adultery. But Jesus met her with grace, and then he challenged her to a better way. He said, hey, leave that life and follow me.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, especially with Thanksgiving coming up and looking at the things that we are thankful for in our lives. even people who aren't ready to take that leap, aren't ready to get baptized, aren't ready to be kind of that Christian that they think of in
Right.
their mind, what can you tell them? What can you say to them of taking that first step to better
Yeah.
themselves and better their life around them?
One of the things that comes to my mind immediately is that, like, when you get around people that have a growth mindset, that have a positive mindset, you are the average of the 5 to 7 people that you spend the most time with. And I tell people all the time, but that's what I love about our church so much, is that you can be kicking the tires on faith. Like, you may not even be a follower of Jesus yet, and there's so many people that, like, that's their story, is they came to United. They weren't even sure what they believed about Jesus yet, but it was something about, they felt peace when they walked in. They felt accepted from the people, and they felt like when the music started, there was something different that was happening. And the way that even the Bible is presented, that for some people, again, they don't even believe the Bible yet, but they're like, man, that helps me in my business. I mean, like, we talk about, Christ-centered leadership is like putting others first. Like, wow, that's a great way to grow your business, is to put others first. If your customers first, you're going to grow your business. If you're in, whatever leadership role that you're in, if you put others first, that's going to help you. And so I would just, that's what I would encourage people to do, is like, hey, you may not be ready to take the step of saying, hey, I'm like surrendering everything and I'm going to become a follower of Jesus. But maybe they're ready to, like, just get around a better community of people that are going to help them and cheer them on to be better versions of themselves.
Sure. Now, I know that you mentor a lot of individuals, and you have people at the church that mentor a lot of younger individuals as well. What are some things that you do or you've done in your life when it was time to take that next step that you would encourage younger people to do or to think about? Because I know that you were a youth pastor.
For sure, yeah. I think one of the lost arts is reading. I mean, I think that whether it's actually reading a physical book or audio book, a lot of people consume books through audio, but I think that is, one of the greatest ways. To me, that is the greatest classroom, is reading books. And it's I don't have a master's in divinity. I've got a bachelor's, but I have hundreds of books that I have read since I have been in the role that I'm in. And so, like, I look at that and I think that's a lost art for some of the young people, of like, they want this, like,
sure.
I say it all the time. We have a microwave culture, but we serve a crock pot God, right?
Sure.
He's into crock pot, and things are better in the crock pot. And so, but we want it, and we want it now. And reading a book is not now. Reading a book is time. It's an investment. It's putting down your phone. It's turning off the TV. It's not playing video games. It's the things that you have to become a man, become a growing individual, and have a growth mindset.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting you said that, because about 3 years ago, I decided I wanted to read more, and it really wasn't for me, it was for my children. I was trying to find a way that I could turn them onto reading more.
Wow.
And no matter how much I read to them every morning, every night, they weren't reading themselves.
Right.
And I said, I bet you if they see Daddy reading, if they see me, then they will start to focus on reading. They'll do it themselves, because everything that I did, good, bad, and ugly, this is what they did. Monkey see, monkey do. So so I said, instead of trying to find more time, what can I replace of what I'm doing, something that's not helpful?
That's good.
And I saw, like many of us, that I was scrolling on my phone for, half an hour at a time, or,
Right.
I'd get lost down that rabbit hole. And I said, every time that I start scrolling on my phone, I'm going to pick up a book. And I put, like, different books throughout my house for places that I would be.
It's brilliant.
And the first year that I did it, my goal was to read 1 book a month. And I ended up reading over 40 books that year, just because I was dedicated to every time I scroll, I will replace it with reading a book. Now I'm going on year 4 now, and every year I've read close to 40 books every year.
It's incredible.
So 120 books, and like you said, the things that you learn that you would have never picked up, that you would have never gotten to your heart, into your mind, never changed your worldview, are just incredible from reading. I mean, I really wish that that's something that more people would pick up.
People ask me, like, well, what's your system for, like, remembering what you've read? And I don't have a great system, but I do know this, is that every page I read is literally adding on to the foundation of knowledge that has already been laid. And so like, I don't know where to go back page and book of where I found that from, but then I found myself in a situation, I'm like, I remember this case study, I remember this story, I remember whatever it is, and whether it be leadership or faith journey or whatever it is, that I'm like, man, that helps me. And you may not be able to recall the exact page number, but it is like, it's knowledge that continues to compound in your mind. It's amazing.
Yeah, you would be amazed to see when I knew that worked for my children, and it was kind of like we'll see if it works, I hope it does. But we were at a ballet class with my little girl, and they had a toy bin and they had a bookshelf, and we were waiting for class, and all her classmates were going into the toy bin and getting stuff, and I was reading a book. The rest of the parents were on their phone, and she went up to the bookshelf, picked out a book, and she sat right next to me with her book and my book, and it was just like, thank you, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And it was
breakthrough.
It was changing that little piece of me
Yep.
that helped change her, and maybe that's where we should go next. Is
Can I say one thing there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's probably a person of faith that's listening to this, and I would just say to them, is that your kids need to see you reading the Bible too. Like there's something so powerful. I read most mornings, and when my son comes down, he's an early riser, so I'm already in my office and I'm reading, and he's like, "Are you working?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not working, buddy. This is time with God." And so I know that not everybody's in the faith journey, but I feel like there's somebody that needs to hear that today. That like they need to see our kids need to see us hungry for the things of God.
So when we discuss and we look at impacting our community, I know you and I have talked a few times about the most important and impactful way you can have is starting with your own family.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about, I gave the example about reading to my kids. Let's talk a little bit about that and how you think families can start that at home.
For sure. Yeah, we did a teaching series several weeks back now. It's called Take Back Your Family. Mm-hmm. So on the same line of like, let's just get to the point. Like, what are we talking about? So for 2 weeks we talked about that, and one of the illustrations I use is the tug of war, and that, like it just feels like, as a parent, that I am like constantly playing tug of war for my son. Like I feel like, we take one step forward, and then he sees a YouTube ad, and it's one step back, and then I feel like I pull a little bit harder, and then we're sitting in the movie theater, and an ad comes up that I'm having to explain of like what this, that, or the other thing is, and it's tough. It really is. But I do feel like, and I said this, I will commit that no one will pull harder on the rope for my son than I'm going to pull. And so they can, the culture and everything can pull, but I'm gonna dig my heels in, and I'm gonna fight like crazy, And I know parents are out there. I mean, I have a 7-year-old. People are like, well, good luck, and I'm like, well, that for me, that's just extra motivation.
Yeah.
When people say good luck, I'm like, okay, cool, because as hard as they fight, when I look him in the eyes, I want to be able to know that I've done everything that I can do to set him up for success.
Sure.
Yeah.
And even just I've got a 7-year-old as well, and also a 4-year-old. Even at these young ages, what are some of the things that you're fighting against already?
I mean, like even just introduction to different, like language, right? At 7 years old, you hear something, they're like, oh, what is that? And you're like, oh gosh, like how did you hear that? Like, oh, at my Christian school, fantastic, awesome, cool, explaining that. No, but like things like that, or lifestyles, or choices that people make that have real life consequences, and you're having to explain to them, hey, why does what happened to this person, and you're like, man, how do I put this in 7-year-old terms so that they still see relationships, right? Like when people around you, if their marriage dissolves and your 7-year-old's asking you questions about like what happened there, and you're like, gosh, how do you even? I mean, you're holding the rope, you're pulling.
Sure. Sure. And the biggest, what I've always told people is the very difficult part, and the reason why I know that teachers have an immensely difficult job is whatever you provide at home is their foundation.
For sure.
So you can imagine with, sometimes our house can get a little chaotic at all the things that we're doing, but, the foundation we set versus a kid who is literally living in a traumatic experience every day,
Chaos.
but understanding that that chaos is their normal.
Right.
Like they're not coming to school and thinking, well, I live in a chaotic environment and this is why things are going the way they are for me.
Yeah.
This is why I'm having trouble learning.
Their adrenaline
That
is so high when they come to school. That's why they're acting out.
and
the way
that's
they're acting.
and they think that everybody is that's their normal
baseline.
basis. Yeah, that's baseline. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So, I think it does take parents are the biggest point in their life that can drive their future, and it's scary.
Right.
I mean, it really is as a father.
Yeah,
it's
and I
very
truly
scary.
believe that the families are the foundation of our country. Like, and I think that is one thing that we have to realize for our kids and for our communities, is that family is so important. It's such a valuable thing, and there's such an attack on the family right now. There really is.
Yeah. So where do you see that attack is? What do you think culture's saying about the family right now?
So for me, I'm a spiritual guy,
Sure.
and so I don't think this is just a surface level battle. I think it's a spiritual one, and I really do think that the enemy, in John chapter 10 says the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And I think that the enemy, the devil, wants to take away everything that is good. And I think that when you look at the statistics speak for themselves of children that are raised by a mom and a dad in the same home. The statistics prove that the success level is so much higher. And so why wouldn't the enemy want to destroy the very thing that's going to provide success for the next generation? And I don't say that with any judgment of people that have walked. I don't know everybody's story. I don't pretend to know everybody's story. But I do know that as for me and my wife, Sherry, which we share, we don't share the same wife, but our wives share the same name. We know that it's that much more important that we're going to fight through this together. There's times where it's high and there's times when it's low, but we've made the decision that we're going to give Jace, my son, we're going to give him our best.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. I mean, Sherry and I just celebrated our 8th year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And there, like you said, there are highs, there are lows, there are times that you want to give up.
Yeah.
But you've got to keep your eye on that commitment.
For sure.
We made one promise to each other from the beginning, and I think that this has helped, is we would not use the word divorce ever.
Yep.
When we were in anger, even if we weren't talking to each other for a day or so, we would not use that word, because there's no coming back from that word.
Absolutely.
So that has been off the table, even when I could have sworn, based on my actions, not
Right.
anything that she did,
Right.
that word was coming out of her
Right,
mouth.
right.
Never
It's
used
pre-decided.
that. Yeah, and it was pre-decided, and we talked a little bit about in church about how it's and I think this is culture hurting marriage as well. It's talking about marriages as it is some sort of a contract, and you've talked about that.
For sure. I was literally on a flight just the other day, and me and my wife just celebrated 15. So
Congratulations.
So we were coming back from our trip celebrating that, and there was the hubby and the wifey shirts. So they had those on, and I was like, clearly. And I was like, so you guys just got married? They're like, yeah. And I was like, it's literally the best thing ever. Like if you do it right, if you honor each other, and they're like, you're the first person to say something positive about marriage. And I looked at my wife a little bit later, because I didn't want to do it in front of them. That's the saddest thing for me, because I think that's what there's probably two mindsets when people get into marriage. Is like, one, it's optional because that's what's been displayed, that if it doesn't work, we just bail out. But here's what I've also seen, is that if you don't handle whatever it is that led you to the dissolving of the first marriage, if you don't handle whatever that is, it's going to follow you into the next marriage. I see this happen in so many people's lives that it's like 7 years in, you're facing the same exact battles. If you look at life is a lot of 7-year cycles. That's a biblical thing as well. But 7 years is a cycle. 8th year is like the year of new beginning. So you're in the year of new beginning.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
wonderful.
It's the honeymoon stage again. Come on, that's what I'm talking about. No, but like people, they want to. It's like they get to this break, but it's like they don't realize how much sweeter it would be if they just pushed through. Come on, the best wine stays in the cellar the longest, right? At least I heard somebody say that. I don't know if it's true. No, but I feel like there's just so much that is at stake with this, and it's important that we fight and that we push through.
And there's a lot of that on different relationships within the families. The one that I always point to is the negative connotation that's put on the mother-in-law.
Right.
You know,
Right.
there's
For
always
sure.
the mother-in-law
Oh, yeah.
is like
oh,
the bad
there.
person in
Yeah.
the family. And I've got to tell you, my mother-in-law is the sweetest,
Yeah.
kindest, most giving
Come on.
person that I've ever known.
I hope she's watching.
I definitely,
I hope she's
I
watching.
definitely don't say it enough, and I'm going to call her right after this and tell her. But she's been there every single moment with
Had
our
your back.
kids, taking care of them, cooking dinner for
Picking
us,
up a sick kid.
just doing anything imaginable. And to think that that's the connotation out there
Right.
to put on somebody before you're even talking to that person, before you're even getting married to somebody,
Right.
is just somewhere we've got to change culture
For
around.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's language. I mean, language. Every words matter, and words are. I've used this analogy before. Words are seeds, and every seed will come to life. Every seed will come to fruition. And so, whether it's a good seed or a bad seed, our words are seeds. So we need to guard our mouths.
Sure.
Because the words
So,
matter.
where do you think, as families, in addition to reading, in addition to trying to provide for our kids, let's talk as men. What do you think men, as our role in families, what can we do to be that provider, and what can we do against what culture is telling us?
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much in 2023, but I know that like the macho manly thing has been like you got to be, like that's, and I man, there's place for all of that, but I think that our kids need nurturers as well. They need to see like all the sides of us, the strong side, but also like the playful side, the funny side, the joking side, the loving side. And I think it's important for, I'm in the floor with my son. I mean, last night I'm under the blanket, and we're in the living room, and we're just kind of like, and he's 7 again, but like until he pushes me away, and then I'm gonna be forcing him. Come on, we're gonna be. But he's gonna. I think it's important for them to see the playful side, and then for them to go out and just probably a half hour before that, we're outside kicking soccer ball. Dad, see how high you can kick it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's cool for them to see the different sides of as men, to see the loving side, the caring side, the provider side, the strong side, all the sides that we can have.
Yeah, no, I love to be goofy with my kids, man. I am so silly, and a lot of times they come back on me and they're like, why are you so silly?
Right.
Like, they're like, even as kids, and even though I'm the example, somehow I guess they're looking at other, fathers, or they're seeing fathers on TV, and they think that I should be more serious.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I'm just like one of the kids once I get around and playing.
Exactly.
Like I'm on the floor with the trucks and
Right.
everything.
Whatever it takes.
And I think one important thing that I would tell new fathers, or fathers that maybe have gotten away from this is, and I am guilty of this, so I'm not throwing shade on anyone, but when your kids ask you to play with them, or they ask you to pick them up, do it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you're doing. And I've been in that position where I've been like, no, I'm too busy, or my back's not feeling well today, or whatever it may be,
100%.
and I have to remind myself, no, you got to do it now. Because if you start saying no, then they're going to not want it anymore. And you've got to take care of that desire, so they want it over and over again. And that desire is going to change from wanting to play with you to wanting advice from you, to wanting to do stuff with you, to when you're older, taking care of you. So it builds that relationship over and over again.
One of the prayers I pray all the time is, God, help me say yes when I want to say no. Because one thing I've found about being a parent, marriage and parenting will do this. It will sanctify you. It will make you more like Jesus if you allow it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of those things where you everything in you. You come home from work, or you come home from a long day, or you've been traveling, and the last thing you want to do is get on the floor. Or last thing you want to do is go outside and play. And I just have to, God, it's a reminder of trying to be selfless. I'm not like dad of the year. There's times where I say no where I should have said yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about like, giving them everything they
Sure.
want. That's not what I'm talking about.
Sure.
But hey, pick me up. Hey, play. Hey, look, can we go? Can we play tag in the house? Can we go kick soccer? It's like just yes when I want to say no. And when everything in me wants to say no, it's like, all right, let's do it.
Sure.
With a smile on my face, not like, okay,
Yeah.
it's like, all right, yeah, let's do it. But it's important.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that we often talk about is, and I think this goes back to maybe some of the history of the church. A lot of people will look to the church leaders and say, okay, that's your job to preach the word, to go out there and put faith into the community.
Right.
But I've heard you say quite a few times that we are the ones, we are the disciples.
For sure.
And how do we do that, even though we're not in a position to preach to people?
No, I think that looking at it through the lens of this is that every single one of us, that we're called to ministry. We talk about pastors like, oh, they're called to ministry. And it might be vocational, like we work at the church, that is our full-time vocation, but all of us are called to ministry. All of us are called to be stewards of what God has given us and to be able to help others see that. Now, that doesn't always mean like, sitting down with people and like, hey, here's what John 3:16 means, and let's walk through the book of Romans, and it may mean that, right? But that's not necessarily. It's holding the door for somebody, right? It's putting the grocery cart back when you go to Food Lion or Walmart or Target, like actually taking it to the. Isn't that a lost art? Like actually returning the cart. It's doing those small things that people start to see something different. And now they're asking questions. And now they're asking questions. They're actually interested. Because we've all met the Christian that is like, they're super excited, right? And they're just like, if you were to die today, where would you go? They ask you all these questions. And you're like, bro, I don't even know you, man. My name's, you're introducing yourself to them. But like allowing people to move at their pace and to move it like in that operate in relationship is so important. And so even as people that are not pastors, we're all ministers, if you will, but allowing those relationships to just to kind of grow as natural and as organic as they possibly can.
Sure. So give me an example of maybe a school teacher and a business owner can do that.
So I think, let's say a business owner, let's say operating with integrity, going above and beyond, right? So a customer comes in and is something didn't go the way they, instead of becoming combative with them, going over the top. I heard somebody say this one time. They were talking about leadership is like there's two chips on the table when somebody comes in. It's customer service moment. It's like there's the end of the world and it's not a big deal. And whichever one you pick up, they pick up the opposite. So when you pick up it's the end of the world, they pick up, oh, it's not a big deal. So it's the end of the world. I'm going to serve you like crazy. Oh my gosh, let me make that right. I'm so sorry. You're right. We should have done better. They're picking up. Then they go, oh, no, it's not that big of a, like they're picking that. But if you pick up that it's not that big of a deal, you're like, what? Like, that, really? Like we provided a service for you. Like, they're picking up that it's the end of the world. They're like, oh, I'm going to leave you a 1-star review. Right? We've heard all of this, right? But I think that when we're able to do that, when we're able to serve people, they start to like something's different about this business. And like you don't have to even play Christian music in your place. Like it's just being different, going over and above a teacher, for instance. It's like showing that nurturing side of like when the student is acting out, just pulling them aside and saying, hey, what's really going on? Like instead of just sending them to the office, which I cannot even imagine being a teacher. So just so much love for all the teachers. I cannot even, but like being able to say like, hey, bud, what's really going on? Like walk me, and they start asking questions. And once they ask questions, it's like, it's now an open dialogue of why you are the way that you are. So
sure.
I don't know if that's helpful.
It is, I thought of a funny example when you said the two chips.
Yeah.
My wife and I years and years ago went to this restaurant and she asked for coleslaw, and in the middle of her coleslaw was a dead fly.
Oh,
and
no.
And they came over and they picked up the chip of, it's not a big deal.
Bad chip.
Bad chip.
Yeah.
They were like, well, I forget what they said, but basically blew it off. Just was like, yeah, we'll just get it out of there, or something like that. Needless to say, we've never eaten there ever again.
Yeah.
Never given
Let's
our
go on
business.
record. I'm just kidding.
No, we won't tell the business name. But to your point, that was, and I'm sure everybody who's listening to this could think of a great example of, but that's a good way to definitely put it. As we're getting into the Christmas season, and there's this push for Santa Claus, which we do Santa Claus with our kids. It's a fun tradition.
Yeah.
It's everybody around the world loves this tradition of the fat man going all over the world
Through the chimney.
Yeah, through the chimney,
Yeah.
So we do this fun thing downtown where on Small Business Saturday,
Yeah.
Santa Claus comes downtown. It's really cool. All the kids are yelling like an
yeah.
international rock star.
For
They're
sure,
like,
yeah.
Santa Claus. So much fun. How do we also teach kids about the real meaning of Christmas and the birth of Jesus? How do we bring that into situations where the secularism is the only thing pushing through?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It goes back to like not being the Christian that's the bashing people over the head.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you believe in Santa Claus? It's all about Jesus. And it's like, okay. Like, yeah, as a Christian, that's true, right? It is all about Jesus. But Santa Claus will be at United Church Experiences, so he'll be here as well. And so, for me, it's one of those things. As say a business owner, say you have a nativity scene set up in your business. Like, I mean, they make them so small now that you could, and people just see, oh, wow, they've remembered the essence of what this is all about. There's small ways to do it. I don't know, like, if there's great ways to do it. If Santa walks in your business, don't turn them away and say, it's all about you. Like,
Yeah.
that's not the way. But there's small and I think
Don't be a Philadelphia fan and throw batteries at them.
Wow, yeah. Philly fans are intense. No, but I think that to the point of what you were saying is like we can do that in tasteful ways. Yeah.
Yeah, it's we always introduce our kids to both ends of it, but it's how do we get them to focus on the real meaning while also having fun with kind of the holiday version of kind of the Hallmark
we
version
have to remember,
of it as well.
I mean, they're kids
Yeah.
as well. So like, it's like, stop focusing on the gifts, and they're like, I'm 7. Like, I'm like, I know, okay, all right. Like, they want to have a good time. So like, I think it is again that balance of like as they begin to mature, and then we can start to just. And I think again, going back to parenting, I'm not parent of the year. It's kind of like that, keeping them in. That's what the guardrails are there for.
Sure.
That's what it's like. Hey, just stay over here. Like,
Yeah.
realize like, hey, presents are fun. But remember, it's Jesus said it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. So like,
Yeah, exactly.
so teaching them that, modeling them that, and let them modeling that for them and let them see that.
Yeah, we've really focused on the giving aspect of Christmas and then driving that into the sense of Jesus and what that means. And they have so much fun with it.
Yeah.
I mean, they really do when they're picking out, because you all have the Christmas. Tell us a little bit about the Christmas store and what the church does here.
I was literally going to say that. So
Yeah.
the Christmas store is like one of my favorite things that we do as a church, and it's just an opportunity for parents to come and to literally give an opportunity for them to give some dignity back to the parents. So they come and they shop, and it's at 80% off of the retail value of what the gifts that are for them to. So we have over 100 families that are a part of this. There's almost 300 kids that are a part of this, and the parents get to come in. They get to shop for all of the gifts, and they get them wrapped. They get to take them home, and while they're in the auditorium at our Milford campus shopping, their kids are in United Kids, and they're learning the Christmas story. And so it's like it's an amazing, like, just a yin and a yang of going back and forth, like accomplishing both in that moment. And my son last year was walking through the Christmas store, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, like, who is all this for?" And we got to like explain that at that point, a 6-year-old of man, we get to provide this for people, and people say, "Well, why isn't it free?" And I think that anytime something is free, it removes the dignity from it. And so we want to partner with that. So 80% off of retail value. So they're walking in. There's a Nintendo Switch. Like, there'll be a Nintendo Switch there. There's hoverboards that are $40. So they're being able to not feel like they're getting a giveaway. They're not getting a handout. They're getting a hand up. And it's an opportunity for us to partner with them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Going back to you talk about every Sunday things that you can bring into your everyday life. What would you say are some of when you take with you on Monday morning, what are some of the things that people can do with them to make sure that their faith is driving their everyday.
Yeah, I think it's those disciplines that we talk about, and for me, some of the most important things for me is that space with God, and so like reading the Word, and it's not about how much you read. Like for me, what I try to do is we have what we call a lamp and light reading plan here, and it comes from the book of Psalms. That your word is a lamp unto my feet, a light into my path. And so like we get the opportunity, it's like 2 chapters of the Bible, and you don't even have to read both of the chapters. You could just read one of them. And what I do is I journal about one verse. I take one verse, and I want it to go with me all day long. And so like that is something. The music that we listen to, we can substitute our drive time with worship music to like continue to cultivate that relationship with God. We can substitute that with podcasts of like other communicators preaching and sermons and things like that to continue to stoke our faith. Books that you mentioned earlier. There's several ways that we can do that, and it's all about realizing that God He doesn't want us to just follow rules. He desperately wants a relationship with us, and as we develop that relationship, it's like, man, He just continues to pull us into His heart, and it's just such a sweet thing. Wonderful. It doesn't become I get to.
Sure. And as we start to wrap this first episode up, what is on the horizon in 2024 and beyond for United Church?
Man, we would need 7 more podcasts to talk about it, but I'm super excited for everything that God is doing. We are going as hard as we can, desperately looking, not desperately, that's not the word, but we are diligently looking for property in the city of Dover to see that campus become permanent. And then once that campus becomes permanent, we're going to look at like what other locations and cities and areas of Delaware do we see United Church being in. So we're excited about all of those things, and just continuing to reach people, one marriage, one person, one family at a time, and to continue to love Delaware till the heart beats like the Father's.
Amazing. And before we wrap up, I wanted to know if you could quickly just pray over our podcast.
Absolutely.
And for the future of it.
Absolutely.
And to put God first in what we do.
Yeah, let's pray. Jesus, thank you so much for Brian. God, thank you for his heart for you. And God, I know that we collectively, myself and Brian, we don't always get it right, but God, our heart is set on you, and we do want you to be the center. And so God, I pray for this podcast. I pray that for every person who comes on it afterwards, God, I pray that your hand would be on them, your favor would be on them. Father, they would pick up the spirit that Brian has, God, and they would see what's different about him, and they would lead them to ask questions. And Lord, he would be able to tell them ultimately about you. God, thank you so much for his service and serving this state, this community. And God, we just pray blessing over his life, him and Sherry and the girls. And God, we're just going to give you all the glory. Thank you so much for just this amazing time we've had together. I pray for blessing as it moves forward. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you all for joining us on our first episode. Look forward to talking with you all every month. We are going to have a few roles in the next few months. We're going to talk about education. We're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about local businesses in Delaware. Stay tuned. You can go on to Mr. 302 Shoop on YouTube and click subscribe, and we will see you soon.